Hello everyone, I'm Extra Cheesy 87 and this is Let's Play a Trails to Azure bonus episode. We're gonna read the Sunshine Agnes novel, which I never read in the actual Let's Play videos themselves because, well, we didn't find them all and I didn't want to read them all until we found them, but it's actually been like a while ago I did this. This video is being recorded like just a couple days before it goes up. I went back and made saves at all the points where we can get the books that we missed, and so we can read them all in the game. We don't have to like look up a transcript. Now I am playing on mouse and keyboard because my controller is out of commission, and I don't know how the controls work. How do I get out of here? Because I am hitting right mouse, nothing, escape, nothing, backspace, nothing, shift, nothing, enter, nothing, shift. Please let me out. I don't know how to get out, dude. X? Okay, you hit X. Okay, none of the keys work. And granted, it's maybe because, can I like go into systems? And I should have done this like on screen. Like, is there a way to, whatever. Let's just read our books. Where are the books? Oh god, people play this on mouse and keyboard? I mean, I played the first 3 Trails games on mouse and keyboard, so I guess I can't say anything. Let's go. Chapter 1, The Cream-Colored Girl. Come on, man. Edwin Arnold had never been able to get the better of that girl, not even once. He was confident in his physical strength and thought himself fairly sharp to boot. Despite that, he was beset with a losing streak that left him at a loss for words. Not much had changed since that day 2 years ago. The ticking of the grandfather clock served as a reminder that time continued to pass inside the cafe, yet the 19-year-old Edwin paid it no mind and hummed to himself in his usual spot by the counter. Dang, it's perfect! He had fully incorporated the details from his interviews and proofread the article 3 times already. He continued to hum as he hastily made his final remarks. If his article could withstand the scrutiny of the afternoon's editorial meeting, he'd finally have a chance to be published. If he was going to show them what he was really made of, he had to make sure everything was perfect. He raised his head and peered over the counter. What do you think, Agnes? Heck if I know, who cares? As she yawned, the cream blonde hair waved around. Agnes's curls swayed and bounced as they were dancing. There was no wind to tussle them, and yet they moved, just as they had 2 years ago. Why do you have to come barging in here so early in the morning? We're not even open yet, she quibbled to herself as she dried the glass in her hand and placed it back into the cupboard. Come on, take a look. I mean, please look over it for me. You know, it's pretty rare for a newbie reporter like me to even earn a shot at getting their own column, right? Edwin pressed his hands together and bowed his head. Agnes silently stared down at him. She had long grown used to how overly formal he was despite her being 2 years his junior. Geez, this is why he's so annoying, she thought to herself. Relenting, she scanned the page as she dried another glass. Impressive work, Ace. There's 3 spelling mistakes. Oh, isn't the date wrong? I see it now, Edwin thought. He raised his red pen once again and began to make his corrections. It's not like fixing this will help you much. What? If you got something to say, then say it. I'm putting them all into this. Chill out, it's just a cooking column. So what, an article is an article. I guess everyone starts somewhere. Still, Ed, I'm not sure you've got what it takes to be a reporter. She stood and grumbled to herself while he toiled away at his corrections. You're a slow writer, you have no attention to detail, and you're a bit of a numbskull to boot. Sure, you passed the paper's preliminary exam thanks to my help, but isn't that a stretch to think you could be a full-blown reporter just because of that? She immediately regretted speaking up. Well, is it because she's a bitch? Edwin collected his draft, stood, and donned a wide smile. Whatever, being a righteous reporter is cool. He told Agnes to expect some good news and bounded out the door, leaving the room silent save the chime of the door's bell. How very Edwin. Agnes shrugged. On the counter next to her, a drowsy black cat let out a yawn. I don't like Agnes. Initial impressions, not a fan of Agnes. The Eaton News Agency. Anchorville is a large part of the Republic of Calvert. Though it was smaller than the capital, Anchorville had managed to accrue its fair share of business. With the city proper backed by the mountains and the market and the harbor districts by the east, it created a sweeping view to behold. Rounding the market's corner, Edwin pedaled his bike hard down Sunset Street. The Eaton News Agency, the office of a small local publication, lay just ahead. The newsroom was a frenzy as nearly half the staff were out of their seats. A veteran reporter, Royce, gestured at the draft and didn't notice Edwin's arrival. The business editor, Cleft, held a telephone to his ear. He looked as if he hadn't slept all night. The copy editor, or rather editor-in-chief, Chang, nodded along with a stern expression. From what Edwin could glean, there had been a delay covering a recent traffic accident. He kept to himself, slipped into his seat, and took out his trusty, worn-out bag. Well, someone's in a good mood despite being late. The voice that cut through the commotion came from Brandon, a middle-aged man with peppered hair and the editor of the culture column. Upon seeing his supervisor, Edwin wasted no time and shoved his draft into Brandon's face. "Today's article's perfect. Please submit it at the editorial meeting." There better not be any spelling mistakes this time, unless you're looking to get scolded again. Edwin's broad smile appeared again. "Everything is going to be great today, I guarantee it." Suddenly, one of the office's 4 phones rang and a passing reporter named Carly answered it. "What?" Carly's brow furrowed. "At 5 a.m.? Yes. Carly stood and waved an arm through the air. The editorial department, which had just been as noisy as a train platform, fell silent. Setting down the phone, Carly turned her gaze to Chang. "Mr. Chang, apparently Werber Hart is dead." A loud clap suddenly rang out from Chang's hands. "I need all this political columnists ASAP!" "Right," yelled the reporters as they clambered to their feet. "That guy, huh? This will be a big domestic story." The crowd continued to murmur as more than 10 reporters formed a mob around the editor-in-chief's desk. "Who was this Hart guy again? Seriously, he was a big shot around here." "He was a famous intellectual. How do you not know him?" "This is going to be a special feature," Brandon muttered amidst the other comments. He tossed Edwin's draft back to him. "The afternoon editorial meeting's canceled, Ed. You're going to be assisting on this story." "Huh? But why?" "Don't why me. We got our orders from the chief." Edwin unconsciously scowled. He was suddenly overcome with a sense of vertigo. It felt as if the ground was shaking, and he staggered. The others in the newsroom reacted in kind. Next came the shrieking sound of metal crumpling in on itself, followed by the grating roar of said metal grinding across the concrete outside the news agency. The cacophony ended in a bang, and through the billowing window, an overturned, burning orbital bus billowed smoke into the sky. Edwin ran out of the room, and bag in hand, as fast as he could. It wasn't his instinct as a reporter that made him move, but the fact that he could have sworn he saw Agnes among the panicking public. Maybe I should learn some damn manners. "Agnes!" Edwin dashed out into the street in the direction of the next block over. He was confident in both his running and his eyesight. Now he was certain. Agnes was in the crowd ahead of him. For just a brief second their eyes met, but a fleeing bystander bumped into Edwin's shoulder, and when he looked back, she was gone. "Why is she running from me?" Edwin yelled to himself. Another explosion rang out as the crashed bus burst into flames once again. Edwin cursed as he ran to the door of the bus and took off his coat to smother the flames. As he wrenched open the door, the screams and cries for help spilled out. Bus driver's hands dangled limply from the window. "Doesn't really matter if my draft ends up in the paper," thought Edwin. Never underestimate a righteous reporter. "We're going to go shopping today, alright, Kagamaru?" After seeing Edwin off that morning, Agnes was getting ready to go out herself. The night before, she had remembered that her uncle's birthday would be coming up soon, so is that where Kagamaru comes from? Agnes's uncle, the owner of the cafe, would be turning 40 this year, where at Edwin's birthday she would sidestep the issue and say something like, "Too much of a hassle." That said, she would still end up getting him something, as she had last year and the year before. However, she couldn't treat her uncle, to whom she owed so much, the same way. Agnes set down her glass of water to scold Kagemaru, who was once again sleeping on the counter. "Oh, you listen to me, you lazy bone," she thought aloud. The black cat's only reply was a deep yawn that contorted his face into an ugly abstraction. Honestly. While her uncle was moving some beer bottles into the back, Agnes let him know that she was headed to her room on the 2nd floor. Maybe I should put on something more comfortable. She was in and out of her room in a flash. She came back down the hall wearing a light tank top. Mid-stride, she grabbed her favorite knit cap from its peg on the wall and put it on as she hummed her way down the stairs. Kagemaru gave her a blank stare. "What? No one saw anything, so it's not a big deal." She shrugged at the fussy cat and turned towards the door. "Let's get going, Kagemaru." With a graceful leap, the black cat landed atop her knit cap, sending her cream-colored curls flying about. "I can't believe you," she thought. If there was any inconvenience to Agnes's waist-long hair, it was its excessive bounce. She attempted to pin it here and there, but it simply couldn't be tamed. 10 years ago, Agnes's mother had disappeared. Her father had been good to Agnes, so she continued to live with him until she was 15. However, her father couldn't give up on finding his wife, so he entrusted Agnes to his brother and left in search of his beloved. In time, Agnes had come to understand their feelings. Her parents must have loved each other very much. What should I do? Agnes sighed. Numerous food stalls lined the harborside market. She'd come here in search of a gift, but neglected to consider what she was actually going to buy. I should have asked my uncle earlier. Her thought was interrupted by an orbital bus that came hurtling past her. The large bus had drifted out of its lane, ramped off the meridian, and launched into the air towards oncoming traffic. Its driver was yelling, "This is some sweet air, dude." Its shining green chassis glared in the sunlight. Sunlight? Sunlight. The tires had spun off the axle and begun to fly away from the body of the bus. The driver must already be dead, thought Agnes. She watched the bus soar through the air. Her confusion gave way to a calm that one wouldn't expect from a girl such as herself. When the bus hits the ground, they will all die. The man in the front row, the pregnant woman near that window, every single person will... Kakemaru. Answering the call, the black cat opened his golden eyes. Agnes closed her eyes tightly and reopened them to reveal a golden pair of her own. She's a magical girl. Amidst the screams and panic were 4 golden eyes gazing at the scene that had yet to unfold. Chapter 4, Shout of Justice. Edwin pulled out one passenger after another. The once crowded market corner had devolved into bedlam. During the crash, the bus had hit a truck carrying volatile, flammable materials. Bystanders fled the scenes. The air was heavy with a hot, thick smoke. Edwin coughed violently as his body was assaulted by the hostile atmosphere. I can't give up, Edwin thought. There are still people left inside that need me. Help me! Grab my hand! It's narrow, but I can get you out! Everything's gonna be alright. I can't! I'm pregnant! What? Edwin had shouted without thinking. He tried to get a hold of himself, but his thoughts were in shambles. I'm only 19. This is way out of my depth. While his mind raced, he frantically tried to calm the woman and told her to wait there. He stood and surveyed the area. Several cars had been caught up in the crash and now lay motionless in the street. Brandon and the news staff had come outside after Edwin to help the rescued passengers. Sirens faintly wailed in the distance. Help was on its way. Ed, you gotta get down from there, yelled Brandon. That truck over there is loaded with gunpowder. It could blow at any second. Like hell I will. Edwin had suddenly become enraged. Why did this accident happen? Why are there so few people helping? He yelled to himself. And Agnes, why did you run from me? He was almost sure she had seen him. Edwin knew he shouldn't be upset. It's only natural that someone would run away if a huge orbital bus came hurtling through the air at them, but that truth did little to assuage his rage. Agnes, why did you run away? You idiot! Who said anything about running? Cold water suddenly engulfed Edwin's body. Bewildered, he turned around, only to then meet Agnes's beautiful blue eyes. She stood there, panting, bucket in hand. Edwin was pretty sure the bucket must have belonged to a fishmonger, as he now reeked of fish. Nice work, kid! Leave the rest to us! Everyone, this way! Hurry! A brigade of bucket-armed fishermen and fishmongers appeared from behind Agnes. Together they doused one fire after another. Of course, we're next to the harbor, thought Edwin. Agnes's hair swayed to and fro before Edwin. You there! Get over there! You! Go fetch a hatchet! Barked Agnes. This girl is something else, mused Edwin. Ed, get out of this way! Get out of my way! That woman is pregnant, isn't she? The girl grasped the bus's frame and took a hold of the woman's hand. Agnes then gently coaxed her out of the bus. She faced Edwin. You know this would have been way easier if you hadn't come, right? Huh? What was that for? Edwin shouted. The girl with the cream blonde hair cracked a relieved smile. Don't worry about it. You really are dense, you know that, Ed? After sunset, the clattering of a cocktail shaker was the only thing disturbing the cafe's silence. Agnes's uncle liked to serve drinks in the cafe at night. The repetitive sound of the shaker was disrupted as the door flew open. Agnes didn't bother to look. She knew it must be Ed. So how'd it go? She asked, still facing away from him. Everyone's in stable condition. Edwin recited the facts he had only learned from the police. In the hospital reports, there were only minor burns and injuries, excluding the bus driver who had already died before impact. Considering the circumstances, people were saying that it was a miracle, one aided by a speedy rescue, of course. Edwin continued, and the cause of the accident was... The driver died at the wheel and the bus went out of control, right? Agnes interrupted. How could you have possibly known that? She shrugged as she turned up the orbital radio. Say, Ed, maybe you really aren't cut out to be a reporter. Personally, I think you'd better suited to be an emergency rescuer. Edwin rubbed his hands together and glared at her. Hey, Toots, give me a... Toots, give me a bourbon. Quit trying to act tough, Ed. I know you don't drink. Here, let me get you an iced tea. As she prepared the drink, she wondered what the bus driver's cause of death must have been. The host on the orbital radio was now covering a different traffic accident. Haven't there been way more accidents than usual lately? She wondered to herself. Okay, we're, like, I don't know, a fourth of the way through? Okay, it'll take about an hour to get through this all, which is about what I expected. Chapter 5, The Wind Rushes on the Downhill. June gave way to July. On the 4th day of that month, Edwin Arnold reminisced on the first round of interviews he had conducted. His supervisors from the political column had overseen the whole affair, though. The subject of said interviews was the matter of Mr. Hart's inheritance. The great intellectual had suddenly passed 1 month prior, and the longer the inheritance lay unclaimed, the more invested the world became into who would get their hands on it. And the only living relative, his adopted son, died at sea shortly after Hart's own death, recounted Edwin as he pedaled the bike. Just ahead is the Cromwell Street Hill. Today's the day I'll reach the top without stopping even once, Edwin shouted. Hart's best friend and the chairman of the board are both claiming the inheritance. However, there are rumors that the son's death was perpetrated by the two men. Edwin's breathing had become ragged. That's a pretty common plot. Still, could the rumors be true? Heck if I know, muttered Agnes at the passing landscape. Agnes sat behind Edwin on the luggage rack. The bike's vibration shook her and the insulated bag she held in her arms. As it happened, there were many coffee lovers at the Eaton News, Ed's boss, Brandon included. Thus, Agnes delivered her uncle's coffee there once a week. The catering service was little more than a hobby for Agnes. Edwin had insisted on doing the delivery himself, but his attempt at being thoughtful had ended up annoying her instead. A righteous reporter getting to start from a cooking column, mused Agnes. Still, even with that dorky attitude of his, when I'm like this with him, I feel so at ease. She watched her hair flutter in the wind as it trailed behind her. Meanwhile, a once again drowsy Kagemaru let out another yawn as he sat atop Agnes's head. He really doesn't get it, does she? Ed thought to himself. If my article can help with just one person make a better meal, that'll make them feel more at ease, and that'll be enough for me. Edwin let out a roar and pedaled up the hill with all his might. That's the kind of justice too, isn't it? He screamed. The bicycle flew over the crest of the hill until gravity brought it down on the other side. It propelled itself down the hill effortlessly. Agnes had let out an astonished yelp, but the sound of it was drowned out by the rush of the wind. This elation Ed's feeling must be his reward for working hard, thought Agnes. She clutched her knit hat to her head to keep it from flying off. She laughed at herself for being surprised. Ed was always looking forward. He always went after his goals with that one-track mind of his. Sometimes to the extent that it annoyed her. About what you said back there. Huh? Sorry, can't hear you. Agnes raised her voice to yell over the wind. That rumor about someone killing Mr. Hart's heir for their inheritance. Someone must have done it thinking they wouldn't be found out. Edwin nodded in understanding several times. Got it. I'll ask about that in today's interview. Jeez, and why would you do that? Edwin was as dense and simple as they come, but that was also why it was easy for Agnes to relax around him and be his friend. She made sure he wasn't looking before revealing a wide smile that she'd never shown anyone before. Edwin might stumble today and make a fool of himself, but she knew he'd keep pushing ahead, just as he always did. She wished she could be there to see it happen. Agnes! What? If something ever happens, call me, okay? I'm a righteous reporter after all, yelled Edwin. His laughter reverberated beneath the clear blue sky. Chapter 6. Fissure. After dropping Agnes off at the Eaton News, Edwin, on orders from his supervisors, made his way to the largest assembly hall in Anchorville. There he would be attending a press conference concerning the matter of Mr. Hart's enormous inheritance. Edwin psyched himself up. Alright, let's go get this story. He entered the hall and hurried towards the press room, but found himself twisting through a maze of unfamiliar corridors. He wasn't quite sure what was happening. Where am I? Where in the world is the press room? He was becoming irritated and his pace quickened. He checked doors at random, behind which were only storage rooms and more corridors. Edwin could picture Agnes sighing and grumpily saying something like, honestly. Steadying himself, he pressed on. A loudspeaker announced that the press conference would begin in 20 minutes. That's not good, murmured Edwin. Becoming impatient, Edwin flung open the door nearest to him. Waiting room 105 was emblazoned in gold lettering on the plaque by the door. Inside was a man in his late 30s wearing a fashionable suit and adjusting his necktie. I think I just made a weird mouth noise. I meant to mute my mic and I forgot. Apologies for that. Oh, we have some time for the press conference, right? The man asked. Edwin recognized him. He'd seen the man amongst the photos of the Hart case's major players. He was neither Hart's best friend nor the chairman of the Hart Foundation. Rather, he was the middleman charged with managing all of Hart's properties while he was still alive. Someone deeply invested in the inheritance case. You're the property manager, Hux Montague, cried Edwin. He had completely ignored, I don't know, I'm just gonna say Montague. I don't think that's how you say it. That's just the first name. That's like what my head auto-completed. Montague's question. I'm Edwin and I'm with the Eaton News. Can I be the one to interview you? Edwin's request was completely nonsensical. It was like he was trying to take the entire story for himself. Hux was flabbergasted, but Edwin wore his usual serious expression. The division of the inheritance needs to be agreed upon by both parties. I'm not really sure how it will pan out. I'm a tax counselor, not a lawyer, replied Montague. He sat back in the black leather chair's cushion. he divulged what he could partially out of sympathy. The liquid assets are being cleanly split 50-50, but there are also properties and valuable items to consider. I can't imagine each party will give up without a fight. Total inheritance is considerable, right? Could either of them be gunning for the whole thing? No comment, that doesn't concern me. Do you know anything about what happened to Mr. Hart's adopted son? He was the original heir and just happened to die just last month. Silence gripped the room. Montague, who had been cooperative thus far, was still as a statue. Crap, did I anger him? That sort of question a tabloid would print, worried Edwin. By the time he had realized how rude his question was, Montague quietly tapped his middle finger against the end table before touching his temple with his index finger. Edwin wasn't sure what that gesture was meant to convey. This might be a little too frank, so please keep this off the record. Speaking personally, I have no interest in Mr. Hart's inheritance, said actually like Montague? I don't know, man. It's true that there's a considerable amount of money on the line, but I don't believe it's enough to be worth killing someone over. Host continued, I wonder if you know of it. Something in this world of even greater value, something beyond a simple human's comprehension, something like a clan of magicians, perhaps? The newsroom was nearly deserted. All the reporters were out covering various stories. Agnes refilled the cups of a few remaining people, and she scanned the room. Between an unfinished draft left on the desk and some unedited notes posted on the wall, Agnes had a decent idea what tomorrow's issue of the Eaton News would look like. Seems like Ed won't be getting his chance anytime soon, she thought. Yet another car accident. I feel like there have been way too many of those lately. Her eyes landed on a picture posted near the front of the room. Excuse me, Mr. Chang, who is this man? Though the newsroom didn't allow outsiders, and though Chang was a bit of a stickler, he did not rebuff her question. He simply looked at her and identified the man as Mr. Hart's property manager. Apparently the photo was taken 2 days before the press conference. Looking at the skilled businessman's photo filled her with dread. This man could destroy me, she thought. He may even know who I really am. Alright, I'm back. Kinda got interrupted there. I don't really know how we're going to edit that because I kind of left the recording running for a little bit. I think we're just going to cut it as soon as we finish reading chapter 6. So yeah, getting chapter 7, I'm also going to show how you get them so we can get them on screen. Getting chapter 7 is like really dumb. Like we're in chapter 3 right now, and this is after when you meet Grimwood. The only way to get the book is to talk to the old lady after that scene, but if you go in the cathedral, you never get access again. Like, the reason we missed this book is because we talked to this old lady, we just didn't talk to her at this exact, very specific point in time. I mean, I guess because maybe they don't expect, like, you know, they expect you, like, once you have to go to the cemetery or for this area for the story, then you would maybe talk to everyone, but I'd already talked to everyone beforehand. So I didn't think to go talk to everyone again. I've got into the habit of reading a book before going to bed, but silly me, I accidentally bought 2 copies of the same book the other day. Perhaps you'd like the extra copy? Please take it. Okay. How do I open the inventory? Books. Yes. Then we read chapter 7. Edwin's Justice! Montague told a story according to the Testaments long ago that at the time of this world's creation, mankind possessed the ability to use arts at will. Over the ages, this ability became lost to time. Nowadays, the only way to access arts is via the use of an orbment. However, a clan inherited that lost power. They are known as magicians. They exist in the present day, living normally among the rest of society. I know this is a lot to take in, and I don't blame you for being skeptical, chuckled Hux. However, I suspect that there may be a magician in our very own city. Go back? I don't know how to go back. Oh god, then I clicked through it again. I accidentally right-clicked, there we go. Perhaps they're even closer to us than we realized. Now, reconsider the death of Mr. Hart's adopted son. If it really was a nefarious killing, then maybe it was a magician's doing. Finally, Montague warned Edwin to keep the story to himself. Tell no one, not even family, he said. Or next time, it will be you or I that mysteriously turn up dead. Edwin was once a selfish and naive child, that is, until one day when he was 14 or 15, he saw a certain reporter's article exposing the evil deeds of a big-shot politician in a faraway place. The legislator used his position and the suffering of others to make a pretty mirror for himself. The article destroyed his career. After the fact, the reporter casually remarked that it was their job to reveal the world's inequities and try and right its wrongs. Since that day, Edwin's sense of justice was focused on revealing everyday hypocrisies and creating understanding in the world. A magician, ruminated Edwin. If there really is such a thing out there, then I'll expose them with my own two hands. The newsroom was as busy as ever. Ed in particular seemed engrossed in his work as of late. He had stopped coming to the cafe and didn't even ask her to check his drafts. What the heck is he up to? Agnes wondered. Ed, are you here? Agnes called out in a relatively low voice. Yeah, oh, it's you. As soon as he saw her, Edwin scrambled to put the papers on his desk. Agnes thought they looked like the kind of materials Ed would gather just before writing an article. She had managed to catch a brief look at his documents before he stowed them away. There was an itemized breakdown of Mr. Hart's inheritance, notes from the press conference, a statement made by the property manager, Mr. Montague, a brief story about a girl with a ribbon, and a revision request from Brandon to reformat the personal history of the board's chairman. She also spotted 2 spelling mistakes on his rough draft, but decided not to mention them. Edwin's distant attitude had miffed her, so she decided to keep those arrows in her back pocket for the next time she needed ammo to tease him with at the cafe. I was out for delivery, so I brought you lunch. You haven't eaten yet, right? Ah, good timing, Agnes. Thanks for saving me the trouble. Edwin snatched the wrap sandwich from her hand and made an immediate beeline for the door. He mumbled out an excuse about chasing the story with his mouth half full of sandwich. Something about his clumsiness was different than usual. Agnes felt a strange dizziness overtake her as Edwin darted out of sight. What am I feeling right now? She looked over to Brandon and Carly for answers, but all they could do was give her an empathetic shrug and return her troubled stare. Uneasiness and confusion was written all over their faces. What does this mean? What the hell is Ed up to? So I think chapter 8 we also did not get on screen, so we want to reload for that. I think this is the only one we legitimately kind of missed, because I never talked to this lady at all. Brood gifted me this book to read on my breaks. I liked it, so maybe you would enjoy it too. Like, I just never came up here to talk to this lady during this point, and, this is still chapter 3, right? I think it's still chapter 3, but... Oh god. Ah! Yeah, chapter 8. 22 Cards of Fate Part 1. Part 1? It's already a book series. What are you talking about? Even after she returned from the Eaton news, Agnes was still shaken up over Edwin's behavior. Edwin is always so straightforward and easy to read, but now, in an attempt to calm herself, she wiped the countertop and adjusted the glasses and silverware sets. Yet her anxiety remained. The sole customer, old man Perdue, sat at a table, leisurely chatting with her uncle. Perdue waved to Agnes and she responded in kind. Do you have any ideas, Kagemaru? She asked. Just to the left of Edwin's usual seat, Kagemaru was drowsily curled up in his favorite spot on the counter. He simply showed her his usual lethargic look. Yeah, I didn't think so, she thought to herself. Agnes reached for a knit cap, but she stopped herself. If she ran out looking for Ed now, she knew she wouldn't be able to find him. He had his bicycle, and knowing Ed, he was bound to be constantly on the move. If he was so worked up over something... Instead, Agnes opened a drawer behind the bar and took out an old-looking deck of tarot cards. Yeah, these ought to do the trick. Locating lost items using tarot fortune reading was well within the clan's rules. Every now and then, Agnes would even perform it for their regular customers. When they returned to excitedly say that she'd been right, it made her happy that she had her powers. However, she had decided long ago to never read her own fortune. After all, knowing too much about one's future could be a danger in and of itself. Agnes briefly hesitated before she undid the string that bound the deck. There was something off about Edwin today, I'm sure of it. She drew and released a long breath before placing her hand atop the stack of cards. Thinking of the possible answers the deck may hold, comforted and calmed Agnes. Excuse me, miss. Huh? Are you telling someone's fortune, miss? Can you do mine too? The girl introduced herself as Tizzy, and she was looking for answers. She fidgeted as she continued. Her father was in the middle of a dangerous job, and she wanted to know how it would turn out. Well, Agnes wondered if the little girl was from Anchorville. She'd never seen her before. Her request had come at a fortuitous moment, though. Agnes was hesitant about using her powers for her own benefits, but she had far fewer qualms using them to help others. Well, I'll make an exception just for today. What'll it be, Tizzy? I'll take a single request. Wow, really? I never lie, and neither do my tarot cards. Okay, and then the last one, this is one, I think, is this after you do the dog stuff, maybe? What chapter is this? Is this chapter 4? No, it's still chapter 3. I don't know. Apparently, it's like you have to talk to him twice. It's kind of like that one book from, you get from Sonya in the first game, where you have to talk to her like 2 or 3 times in a row to get her to give you the book. Okay, so this is the day after the train derailment. Like, because we talked to him the one time, and then if you talk to him again, he gives you the book. Because, like, I remember this, where he says all this stuff, but I don't think we ever talked to him a second time. Still have a long way to go, not ready to fill my brother's shoes yet. Crossbell's most modest man. I remember, yeah, we remember this, T.O. And then you talk to him again, and he's like, hey, here's a book. Did y'all have any interest in reading this book? You read light novels, Deputy Commander? Never would expect that a gruff guy like Duggo to be reading this kind of stuff. Of course I do. Anyone can enjoy a good novel, especially when it's about magical girls. It just so happens that Commander Bala's recommended this to me, but as you know, I've been pretty busy lately. Give it a read when you have some time. I think you'd enjoy it. Thank you, sir. Now, you might be missing the context because you haven't read the previous other 8 books, but, thank me later. Game. I don't know why it doesn't, like, work. For some reason, the scrolling, like, it keeps, I don't know. It just feels weird. 22 Cards of Fate, Part 2! Tizzy acted younger than she looked. Her curiosity led her to ask about the meaning of each and every card. Together at the counter, Agnes performed the reading and announced her conclusion. The results were not bad. This would indicate that, yes, your father's job will go well for the most part. I'm sure everything will be fine, Agnes smiled. Tizzy beamed with a bright smile. She thanked Agnes, but it was actually Agnes that wanted to thank her. Her overwhelming anxiety had vanished, and she felt more like herself. Tizzy soon left afterward, and Agnes waved her goodbye. The doorbell clattered as the door swung shut. Now then, what about Ed's fortune, wondered Agnes. She sat at the counter and carefully gathered the cards. Her palms were sweaty, knees weak, arms were heavy, but she tried to pay it no mind. It's not important, Agnes muttered to herself. For readings that required more accuracy, Agnes had developed a simple method. First, she centered herself and then proceeded to draw a single card. Alright, Ed, just what are you up to? Miss, you dropped one! Huh? For some reason, it was Tizzy who stood beside Agnes. She crouched and picked up a card from the floor. Agnes took it and thanked her. She looked down at the card and suddenly froze. It was as if she had been petrified. It was Death, the Reaper's card. Agnes was overcome with dizziness, and in her daze, Tizzy disappeared once again. Monka. The leaky faucet stopped dripping. The cards in the deck Agnes held shifted. Then one after another they flitted from her hand and floated in the air around her. All the while, her focus was pinpointed solely on the card in her hand, Death. Agnes was suddenly shaken back to consciousness. She looked up to see Kagemaru staring back as he perched upon the top of her head. The tarot cards that were hanging in the air fell to the floor. Kagemaru? The cat slunk down into the counter and drowsily stared at her as if to say, "What are you doing?" I know, I was just a little surprised. Agnes muttered to herself as she gathered the scattered cards. For whatever reason, her uncle in Purdue seemed to not notice anything. That was careless of me. I need to forget about all this and get back to work, she thought. However, Agnes placed the death card on the counter and drew a card from the now reformed deck. She couldn't read the same fortune twice, so she tried to focus on whatever it was that Ed had been chasing this past week. For our next story, yet another traffic accident occurred around 1:40 this afternoon. The oval radio had somehow turned itself on. I must be putting too much power into the readings, thought Agnes. After shaking off her dizziness, she returned her attention to the newly drawn card, the sun, reversed, otherwise known as darkness. Agnes pondered the potential meaning of this revelation. There have been more accidents than usual lately. Perhaps darkness is somehow linked to those events? Maybe Ed had found a lead towards the truth of the matter and for whatever reason decided to handle it on his own. Meow, chided Kagemaru with a languid expression. I know, but neither Purdue and her uncle even noticed, refuted Agnes. She once more reached for the deck of cards, but stopped herself midway. It would be faster to ask the Eaton news staff about Ed's whereabouts. Agnes hurried to the orbital telephone beside the clock and called the office. Eaton, news, how may I help you? Oh, Brandon, sorry to bug you, but around noon, Edwin ran off somewhere to work on his article. Do you happen to know where he went? Ed, what are you talking about? He's been working at his desk since this morning. Agnes' face went pale. Ed's at his desk. No, that can't be the real Ed, she thought. A shrill sound resounded from the street in front of the cafe. Through the window, Agnes watched as a crushed orbital scooter flew through the air before careening into the ground. She suspected the rider had died before they even hit the ground. Purdue and her uncle continued to chat, as if all was right with the world. She shook their shoulders, but neither reacted at all. Then the world began to violently shake beneath her, and she squatted in place. Agnes was just now beginning to grasp the depth of the terrible power running amok in the city. I've got to stand, she thought. As she did, Agnes peered over at the death card on the counter. For now, it was the only truth she could believe in. Okay, what? Things got pretty weird there. So I guess like the uncle and them are not magicians. It's just that like her dad is probably a magician as well. And then for the last ones, we want to go to the finale. We actually found 10, 11, and 12 on screen. But we have to trade in for the last one. I guess we can go ahead and do. I think I got everything that we need to trade in. We got all our Kagemaru gear. Yes. Yes. Okay. Got anything to say? I think we have some katanas in the storeroom. They'd be perfect. I can make Vaughn and Bruce wear this stuff with me, and then we'll sword fight. Do you really need swords for a children's game? I also cannot endorse this use of Kagemaru intellectual property. I think I heard something about, like, if you trade in for that, you can, like, go downstairs. Alright, since y'all are regulars, I guess it's fine. But don't touch anything. It's not my fault if you die down there. Thanks for the heads up. But we actually can go downstairs now with the final forbidden zone, and there's, like, a recipe. Is the recipe any good? I have no clue how you access recipes, if I'm being honest. Like, I'd have no earthly idea what the button combination is. What is it? Options? Mouse and keyboard? Shortcut menu is U! What? What? Oh yes, the famous U key! I'm clicking and nothing's happening. But how do people play this on mouse and keyboard? Let's read our books. Okay, number 10. Path of the High Priestess. The grandfather clock in the parlor struck twice, and Agnes has quietly crept out of her room. By the light of the moon, she slowly passed through the cafe and slipped out into the chilly night. Previous day, she had ended up drawing one last card to determine when she should make her move. It was the High Priestess, the second arcana, and thus 2 a.m. It'll be fine, I just know it. Agnes had thought. She looked down at her shaking hands. I can't get ahead of myself, though. Ed could die if I'm not careful. I just need to follow the cards and wait until 2 a.m. before doing anything. Meow! Kagemaru roosted on Agnes's head. He was heavier than he looked. Agnes wondered if his laziness was making him fat. That said, she felt a certain sense of comfort having his weight atop her head. Agnes took a deep breath to center herself beneath the glow of the full moon above. Let's get going. Now relaxed, she could feel the septium veins flowing beneath the earth. She walked down the dimly lit streets, guided by her instinct towards the darkness beyond. Anchorville's nights were cold, even at the height of summer. Agnes wore a light sweater. Her cream-colored hair complemented the pale moonlight. With each step, the Esmelis necklace around her neck jostled in time. The tiny stone was the only thing Agnes's mother had left to her. The memories had become so distant that Agnes could no longer remember her own mother's face. When Agnes was a child, her mother had used her powers in public and then had to disappear. Such was the law of her clan, though Agnes couldn't recall how she knew such a thing. We carry dangerous potential within us. We must keep it hidden and live amongst others, she recounted. Before long, the road led out of the city and came to its end at the base of a large hill. A cemetery, murmured Agnes. The top of the hill was lined with rows of black tombstones. How did I get oaks? I don't know. Among them, she saw something moving about. Edwin, he's here, she exclaimed to herself. Someone in a coat stood some distance away. She recognized his coat. It was still charred from the traffic accident a few weeks ago. I've told him so many times to get rid of it, but he's still wearing that ratty thing, thought Agnes. She removed Kagemaru from his perch atop her head and crouched behind a gravestone. She berated herself for wearing such a conspicuous outfit. Regardless of her unpreparedness, she knew Edwin was in mortal danger. She steadied her breathing, eyed the distance between her and Edwin, and slunk into the shadows. One second. Oh. Alright. Chapter 11. Nothing but screams. Agnes watched as Edwin clumsily tailed someone deeper into the graveyard. She was bewildered by his lackluster performance. Geez, if he keeps this up, he's going to be noticed, she mumbled. From where she stood, she couldn't tell who it was that Ed was pursuing. Eventually, the prolonged chase concluded at the hilltop. Something's up, thought Agnes. Ed came out of hiding and stood to face someone. Sorry she gave me the slip again. Well, these things happen. Damn it, I thought for sure tonight would be the night. Still, Montague, was that little girl really created by a magician? I have no doubt that human-looking shell is a malevolent power, an evil spirit. You've done your research, so I know you are aware that she has been present at every accident, said the man as he clutched his right hand. He ends lives with a single strike, diagonally through the heart, he said. As he traced a line across his chest, Montague continued. Evil spirits create disturbances, and only magicians can perceive their presence. Is that so? Now, I wonder, is the little girl that, I guess it's like the Tizay character we saw? I'm assuming the Montague guy is the evil magician, and he's trying to get Edwin to reveal the identity of Chickadee? Agnes, maybe? Something like that? Seems you still don't fully believe me yet. In that case, let me tell you another interesting fact. The man leaned in to whisper into Edwin's ear, but in the calm of the moonlight graveyard, it felt as if he was speaking directly to Agnes. If you kill a magician, you can steal their powers. Agnes reeled, overcome with vertigo, and rustled the weeds at her feet. She cursed at herself beneath her breath. Killing a magician? How could I be so blind? The property manager, Hux Montague. I've completely fallen into his trap, she scolded herself. What the? Agnes, why are you here? Do you realize what time it is? Edwin was thick-headed, so much that she may be able to use that fact to her advantage. She stood, her focus not on Edwin, but instead on Hux Montague. So I've been your target this whole time, huh? I wasn't aware you were such a young lady, though. All those horrible acts. So much death. Just to get to me? You make it sound so frivolous, when in fact, this is the only way for an imitation like me to gain more power. Ed, run! Get out of here! Agnes dashed straight at Montague. I've got to close the distance, get him away from Ed, she thought. Suddenly, Kagemari fidgeted in her arms and turned to face her. He mowed in her face as a warning. An invisible force swept Agnes's legs out from under her, and a sharp pain shot up from her leg. She collapsed to the ground and writhed in pain. Blood gushed from her pierced thigh. From behind her came the sound of a child's laugh and the sound of her red ribbon fluttering in the wind. You're the little girl who was at the cafe today. Tizay, you said it yourself, didn't you, that my father's job will go well for the most part? Tizay's pristine porcelain skin slowly undulated, as though something were squirming beneath the surface. My daughter's quite well made, isn't she? Boasted Hux. Agnes screamed with all her might. Ed, get away from him! Edwin, who until then had been stunned, shook off his bewilderment and began to process the events transpiring before his eyes. So this evil spirit we've been chasing this past week has been this thing that you call your daughter? Montague, it was you all along. You're the magician, he shouted. This man is a fake, thought Agnes. He's just using the power he stole from a real magician, from Mr. Hart. Run, Ed, please, she yelled. Get out of here. Montague deftly raised his right hand, and his gesture exuded a degree of arrogance. My dear Edwin, I must thank you for bringing me the girl. However, this is the end of our partnership. Now, you shall become part of my power. Hux motioned towards the boy with his white fingers, and a crisp sound rang in Edwin's ears. With a snap, Edwin's eyes rolled back, and his body fell to the cold ground below. Chapter 12, Eclipse Atop the Hill. What is she doing? Edwin echoed through Edwin's hazy, semi-conscious mind. It sounded like Agnes was crying, sobbing even. She looked like she was hitting something, but she lost the advantage and was sent flying backwards. Calling it a fight would hardly be fair. Agnes didn't even stand a chance. She should be stronger than I am, mused Edwin. Her visage glowed and shone a brilliant white light, but for whatever reason, he thought the look was very natural in Agnes. His vision faded. Within his mind, the girl in the ribbon appeared before him. There you are, mister! Quickly, this way! Let's help pop it together! She embraced him in a tight hug. Her arms were thin, cold, and strong like a vice. Edwin let out an unintentional grunt when she squeezed him. Hey, you! Papa wants to get new powers soon. I need to be a good girl and grant Papa's wish. Come on, let's hurry! Edwin stared at the little girl. The longer he looked, the less he could accept the truth that she was an evil spirit living within a human facade. Mr. Montague isn't your real father, right? Said Edwin betwixt his pained grunts. He did his best to show her a strained thumbs up. If you want to meet your real father, I'll help you find him. After all, I'm a righteous reporter. Ed! Ed! If I begin treating him immediately, he might stand a chance, thought Agnes amongst her jumbled thoughts. If I could just get to him, then... However, Montague was not about to allow her the chance to try. Agnes's body was suddenly thrown into the air by some invisible force before careening back to the ground. I'll never make it. I can't even stand, gasped Agnes. Tears fell from her eyes as she lay collapsed against the dirt. Kagemaru ran to her and motioned for her to run, but she was no longer able to notice his presence. Ed, why? He has always been there for me. I've always kept my distance from others, but Ed is the only exception. All my most cherished memories are the ones I spent with him. I've tried so hard to hide that, but Ed, he's my one and only friend. Oh god, I accidentally hit my mouse pad. It was like hanging over the desk and I like knocked it up and knocked my mouse across the desk. Absolutely magnificent. Montague stood at the crest of the hill with the moon at his back. You, young lady, shall be my second. I may have gained this power by chance, but magicians really do have certain value, don't they? By offing magicians one after another, I will obtain infinite power. In the meantime, I'll simply kill for sport. Montague roared with laughter. These so-called magicians can take and keep anything they desire. Theirs is a wicked power indeed. The body known as Tizze stopped moving, her face contorted as the spirit within violently writhed just beneath her skin. Finally, her flesh gave way, tore, and the spirit burst forth. The shadowy form of Montague's magic was unmistakable, even under the shade of night. The skin has reached its limit. No matter, muttered Montague. The dark energy returned to him and coiled around his body. Inflicting pain with this power brings me such joy, but I had planned to finish with my own hands anyway. Now, to make bloody art of you, let's both enjoy ourselves. Agnes had lost all inhibition and screamed, Murderer! The man, clad in coils of shadow, grew intoxicated by the power enveloping him, and he burst into laughter at her declaration. I'm not doing this of my own will. It's this power. It's your power, you blasted magicians are to blame, thundered Hux. Before Agnes's eyes, the man's shadowy form grew larger and blocked out the moon as the coils approached her. Agnes's mind stewed. Montague's right. My power, the magician's power, is a curse. Misfortune befalls anyone who gets too close to us. That's why this power's true nature must never be revealed, no matter the cost. Sorry, Ed, Agnes thought. You always wanted to be a righteous reporter, and yet Agnes solemnly closed her eyes. Be real good at that dad showed up. Chapter 13. The Magician. Montague, enrobed in his power, became increasingly maniacal. Since obtaining this power has been very hard for me, you know? To hold back this feeling, this lust for death. I can't help it. The joy I find in killing is because you made me this way. The magicians are to blame. The dark energy rushed from his body and swept through the cemetery with the fury of a hurricane. It eradicated the tombstone in its path and steered its course towards Agnes. The shout of a young man cut through the gale. You're wrong! Get him, Makoto. Against all odds, Edwin stood between the attacker and his prey. He held his trusty messenger bag in his outstretched hands. It's obvious that the person doing the bad things is the one at fault. Don't go blaming all this weird stuff on weird stuff like magic. The scene was dotted with moon-bathed confetti that slowly floated in the air. Edwin had somehow blocked the black magic with his bag, and the draft within had been eviscerated. Agnes, who had resigned herself to her fate, now wore a baffled expression. Edwin, you're safe! How? Edwin gestured at himself with his thumb and grinned. Agnes had so many things she wanted to say, but in that moment she was simply at a loss for words. I'm going to beat you down, Montague. I'm sure you'll be willing to do a post-fight interview, won't you? Dude, that's a badass line. Don't screw with me, kid. What's with that bag, and how are you even alive in the first place? Edwin rushed forward without hesitation. Ah, jeez, Agnes thought. Even now, Edwin didn't completely believe in magic. He hadn't been able to see any of Montague's twisted powers, but he couldn't rule out the possibility or simply assume it to be some kind of curse. He would find the truth on his own. One detail at a time, as he always had, he chose to remain as he always had been. Reckless. Kagemaru! The black cat was clinging to the backside of Ed's worn-out bag. It must have been Kagemaru's power that had dissipated the dark mage's spell. Edwin would not have survived were it not for Kagemaru. The cat fixed his jet-black pupils on Agnes. Are you sure about this? Emanated from his ebony gaze. I am. I don't want to have to lie to Ed anymore. I'll show him the truth. The real me, Agnes thought back. He looked up into the night sky. It's a full moon tonight. There was no wind to move them, but Agnes's cream blonde curls danced about as her arms erupted, sending forth a blinding blast of light into the night. Finale. Sunshine Agnes. Edwin Arnold had never been able to get the better of that girl, not even once. He was confident in his physical strength and thought himself fairly sharp to boot. Despite that, he was beset with a losing streak that left him at a loss for words. Not much had changed that day since that day 2 years ago, and perhaps forevermore. The wave of light sent everything flying upwards into the sky. Edwin found himself hanging aloft. His hands were held in hers. They were soft and warm like sunlight. Agnes's whole body shone. Her cream blonde hair looked like white hot flames. Thank you, Ed. It's been fun. Wait, where are we going? Where are we? Am I dreaming? Ed, you're as dense as ever. Even though you won't be able to remember what happened today, there's something I need to tell you. Agnes smiled. It was a rare smile, a pure expression of happiness. She had never shown it to anyone before, simply because she had never been able to. Until now. I'm a magician, Ed. This is who I truly am. Ed wasn't sure if he was shocked or somehow already knew. Now that he thought about it, Agnes was smart, good in a fight, seemingly knew everything, and even had a sharp intuition. It would explain a lot if she were a magician. Well, that's Agnes for you. Now then, fix me a bourbon. If she could, she would have served him an iced tea instead, but that was impossible. Agnes was no longer in Anchorville. Edwin was finally discharged from the hospital following his treatment for 2 ribs that he didn't remember breaking. From there, he boarded a long-distance orbital bus bound for the capital. It was too far of a trip for his trusty bicycle. Besides, the time spent idling the bus would be more conducive to planning his next move. Montague had been arrested for the murder of Mr. Hart. The investigation revealed that Tizay's grave had been violated, and afterward the young girl was laid to rest once more. The deadly string of car accidents finally came to an end. Edwin leaned against the bus's shaking frame and thought about the future. The events of that day had completely disappeared from the minds of the citizenry. Nobody knew the girl had disappeared. Even Edwin could scarcely recall what happened that night. Every day he tried as he might to remember, but only recently recalled their last conversation. This won't be the last time we meet. Well, so long as you don't become a reporter, that is. What does that even mean? Reporters are supposed to seek the truth, aren't they? Agnes clasped the Ismelis necklace to her neck. The pain she felt was clear as day. You're way too oblivious to your own feelings, Ed. I won't give up no matter what. I'm going to be a righteous reporter. In his spot by the window, Edwin flicked through his notebook of plans. Being a freelance reporter was more challenging than he had ever imagined. His seniors at the paper, including Brandon, had been repeatedly exasperated with him during his training. There's no way I can back down if Agnes is the one saying stuff like that. I'll take on that challenge of hers. I'll just keep being a reporter, and I'll find her all while revealing the uncertainties in this world. Just you wait, Agnes. I swear that to you. The wind raced across the vast, open prairie. Calvert's winds were magnificent. That's some strong wind. The girl sat by the window of a familiar bus. She rested her chin on her hands, and her cream blonde hair bobbed in the sunlight. It was the girl who had come to Anchorville and brought sunshine wherever she went. Edwin cracked a soft smile and turned to face her. Well, a righteous reporter can only believe what he's seen with his own eyes, you know. The bus traveled down the gravel road beneath August's vast blue sky. Wait, are they on the same bus? Is that the implication there? A long-distance bus bound for the capital. I can't tell if it's supposed to be that they're on the same bus. Yeah, turn to face her. Alright, so yeah, he tracked her down. That's the implication there. Alright, that's actually pretty good. I enjoyed that. Kind of a little rush there towards the end, I think. You know, especially in them like skipping the whole actual confrontation with the Montague guy. I was a little like, I guess I was under the impression that like he was like stronger than her, but I guess it was just that Agnes didn't want to use her superpowers for fear of having to leave the city by revealing it, I guess. But yeah, that was neat. I'm glad we decided to come back and read all those. So another thing, I guess I kind of should have mentioned this at the start of the video, but as like a little bit of an update on future Let's Plays. This is something I'm more going to talk about in the actual... What I would like to do is this video should go up Friday, to whatever day of July that is. Today's Tuesday the 29th, so this is being recorded a few days before it goes up. The finale should go up Thursday. I want this video to go up Friday. Then I want the LP Reflections video to go up that Saturday, hopefully, assuming I'm able to record it. Because like I don't want to record it until the finale goes up because basically I want to, you know, if anyone like comments something and brings something up that makes me think about the game differently, then I want to be able to kind of like I guess respond to that, because I mean there's been several times where people have commented something and it's made me either think deeper about a subject or made me kind of rethink what I actually already thought, things like that. So I kind of want to wait until the finale goes up before I record my like thoughts on the actual 2 games completely. because it's going to be talking about both Zero and Azure. Hopefully that will come out tomorrow. Then Sunday, I don't know. I haven't decided. I had originally planned to take like a week or two off before starting Cold Steel, but honestly, we might start it very soon, like i.e. a few days, like maybe next Monday. Maybe. It kind of depends, because I want to kind of, like, I would like to record it right now, if I'm being honest, but I don't want to. I want to at least wait for the finale to go up, so anything I need to know about Cold Steel can be commented and whatnot, but I probably will be starting that sooner rather than later. And also, I don't want to start it just yet because my controller's still out of commission for a few more days, because I had to reorder like a micro USB cable for it, because the one I've been using finally broke. And if I was a smart person, as soon as I noticed it was breaking, I would have gone ahead and ordered a replacement, but I'm not a smart person. I just kept waiting and waited until it got to the point that it basically completely broke. And I don't really want to play the game on mouse and keyboard, if I'm being honest. Granted, I mean, I played the Trails in the Sky trilogy on mouse and keyboard, so it's probably fine. But then again, playing this, I'm like, these controls don't make any sense. I still don't know how do you, like, you don't, the arrow keys don't do anything? Oh, it's WASD. It's what you hold U and hit WASD. Yeah, that makes sense. What? What's that recipe? Is that recipe any good? Was it the Picnet lunchbox? I don't know. Go Lloyd. Go Lloyd action. Okay, now how do we turn the page? When we figure this out, we will finally have mastered Trails Azure. Okay, so we click on it? No. Middle click? No. Tab? No. WASD? No. One of these buttons has to work, man. Whatever. Alright. So that's Trails to Azure. Like I said, we will have a discussion video coming out hopefully the day after this. Worst case scenario, it'll come out Monday if I'm not able to record it this week. I probably should be able to. It just kind of depends. That'll probably be like at least an hour or so. Just kind of talking about the games, thoughts on them as a whole. What it was kind of like to let's play them, and also we'll talk about Cold Steel a little bit at like the end of that video. Basically some more like concrete stuff. The main thing you need to know is that it's going to be happening sooner rather than later. I'm Extra Cheesy 87. Stay tuned for the next part, or that video in the next Trails Let's Play, and bye guys.